caramelized violets on top, but then it's served on an eagle that has been carved out of ice. Though originally peach melba was called Pechaucigne, or peach with swan, to commemorate Melba's swan entrance in the Wagner opera Lohengrin, and it was placed on an ice sculpture in the shape of a swan. I guess it was a time before Instagram, and he just kind of assumed that his famous clients wouldn't compare notes and realize that their one-of-a-kind dishes were very, very similar. Now, unfortunately, the glory days at the Savoy Hotel had to come to an end when, in 1897, he, Ritz, and the head waiter all left for personal reasons. Or at least that was what the public was told, and was the story for 80 years. Only recently have documents shown a rather more ignominious reason for their departure. By a resolution passed this morning, you have been dismissed from the service of the hotel for, among other serious reasons, gross negligence and breach of duty and mismanagement. I am also directed to request that you will be good enough to leave the hotel at once. Personal reasons indeed. Seems that the trio had been taking kickbacks from suppliers as well as other light embezzlement schemes, and they were treating future business partners to like fancy dinners that would not end in an actual bill. And this led to an astounding disappearance of over 3,400 pounds of wine and spirits in the first 6 months of 1897. Though the head waiter claimed that it wasn't nefarious, it had just been drunk by the staff, a rather drunk staff, I'm thinking. But they all admitted their wrongdoing and made restoration, and they were never charged, nor did it ever become public knowledge. And that's good, because it allowed César Ritz to go establish the Ritz Hotel in Paris and the Carlton Hotel in London. And with him came Escoffier and all of their distinguished clientele, including Melba, Bernhardt, and the Prince of Wales, as well as his mistress, Lily Langtry. And it was this period, Escoffier's time at the Ritz and the Carlton hotels, that really turned him into a celebrity chef, even having Kaiser Wilhelm II tell him, "I am the Emperor of Germany, but you are the Emperor of Chefs." This, of course, was before World War I, so the compliment carried some weight. It was also during his time at the Ritz that he wrote Le Guide Culinaire, with over 5,000 recipes. And it's still used in many cooking classes to this day, making his claim that throughout my entire career I have shown some 2,000 cooks all over the world a bit of an understatement. But the bulk of the recipes are rather brief and definitely written for a professional chef in mind. Case in point, the peach melba recipe. The one that we use today is actually from a later book that he wrote, but the one that is included in Le Guide Culinaire simply says, poach the skinned peaches in vanilla-flavored syrup. When very cold, arrange them in a timbale on a bed of vanilla ice cream and coat with raspberry puree. Definitely a recipe written for someone who already knows a lot about cooking. But next week, we're actually going to talk about a cookbook written around the same time period, but with the amateur home cook in mind. Fanny Farmer's The Boston Cooking School Cookbook. So make sure to watch next Tuesday. But for today, that's all we've got. Honestly, I could go on about Escoffier for a lot longer, but this episode would get to be really, really long. So I'm going to cut it off right there and get back to my peach melba. So after about an hour, remove the peaches and the raspberry from the refrigerator, cut the peaches in half, and it's time to plate. Now the recipe says to put them in a silver timbale, which can actually mean several things at the time period, including in his book. He has several different references to this, and they're all kind of different. But really, it was like a silver cup about that big. You can't see anything in it, so it's actually not as nice as the glass. So I'm going to use a glass dish. Besides, I don't have a silver timbale. So add vanilla ice cream, then the peaches, then the raspberry sauce, and some almonds if you wish. And here we are, Escoffier's Peach Melba from 1903. I have to say, just the colors of this dessert are just lovely. You know, just the brightness of the raspberries and the sauce and the peaches is just lovely. Let's give it a shot. I can't. It's already melting. This ice cream melts so fast. Here. Those nuts. There's a little crunch to the nut that is crunch to the nuts. That's really nice. Really bad. I'm gonna have some more here. The raspberry puree really shines through. Melted ice cream or no, this is delicious. Perfect for summer. Is it world-changing or innovative? Well, not today, because honestly, I could see this on a menu. I mean, it is still on some menus today, and it hasn't changed all that much. But it may have been new and innovative then, and it's absolutely wonderful regardless. One more interesting little Escoffier tidbit is that while he was working at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, he had lots of cooks obviously working under him. And according to some sources, one of those cooks was named Van Bach. He had started as a dishwasher and worked his way up to be a pastry chef, or work under the pastry chef. And later on in life, that person would end up becoming the president of Vietnam. But by then, he went by the name Ho Chi Minh. Now, there are some sources that say that he didn't actually work under Escoffier, that he worked at a different hotel at the time, but he was definitely in the area working as a chef during the time period. Just kind of weird that, you can go from dishwashing to president of Vietnam. Never give up on your dreams, kids. So thank you again to my Patreon patrons, and make sure to follow me on Instagram, Tasting History with Max Miller, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Oh, did I not do the squats? I probably didn't. Let's just do them again. And then I go back to the sit-ups. Sorry about that. I went straight to the lunges, didn't I? Sorry for the confusion. And then back to the sit-ups. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Not very objective, but in my humble opinion, this meal right here is the most convenient thing you can make. And not only is it convenient, it's nutritious. It's pretty easy to make. It's cheap. It's very fun to make. It's also very shareable. You can bring all of your friends together at the table. All 2 of your friends, including yourself. Maybe 3 if you include your dog. And most importantly, straight delicious. I'm talking finger licking, lip smacking, tongue twisting delicious. What? Tongue twisting? Of course, I'm talking about chili. Now, chili is defined as a spicy stew of Mexican origin containing chili peppers, meat, tomatoes, and beans. But really, that's just scratching the surface of chili. Because chili can be anything you imagine. Everyone has different chili philosophies. You can really take your whole personality and just put it in a pot of chili, which is what I like most about chili. And I'm realizing I'm saying chili way too much. I'm probably going to say it a bunch more times. Chili. Here's the plan. First, I want to show you a really convenient chili. It's quick. You can make it with readily available ingredients. It's nothing fancy. It's quite healthy. And you can make that stuff in bulk, reheat it in the next 3 to 4 days. Reheat it. I struggle with English sometimes. Let's call that one the chill chili, because we're chilling. After that, I want to show you Kevin's special chili, not to be confused with Kevin's special chili. Kevin's special chili is my heart and my soul, poured in a pot of chili. It's a labor of love. It takes a little bit more effort, but it's really worth it, trust me. But let's start with the chill chili.
First, you'll need some sort of peppers of various heat levels. Whatever you have in your fridge, just get those nice and chopped. Some onion, very important, get it nice and chopped too. And let's get both of these in a trendy looking red pot. At this point, it could be quite useful to develop the flavor for a while. Take your time with these onions, but honestly, most of the time, I don't have the patience for that kind of shit. So I just wait for them to get a little softy, and then I'm throwing in my relatively lean beef. Salt it down, and simply cook it until it's cooked. I'm gonna throw in a big spoonful of garlic, of course. I keep adding more and more garlic to this. It never seems to be too much, so I don't know. And now it's kind of the most crucial part, because this is where we build flavor. And we don't have a ton of time on our hands, so we're gonna compensate with spices. Maybe I'm way overdoing it, but I don't really measure these things. Just cook with your heart. We're gonna mix these spices and add in a good tablespoon of tomato paste. This has a deep, concentrated flavor. It's gonna add some depth and concentration. And look at that beautiful color we already have, straight up. Add in a can of tomatoes, and then speaking of cans, you know I'm adding in those canned beans. And you can just add them straight up like that, no need to rinse or anything. That liquid actually helps thicken the chili, and it's also just convenient. And okay, honestly, if you're really desperate, you can be done right now. Spoon this on top of some rice, and you're good to go. But I like to make this a complete meal just by itself, so I'm throwing in some potatoes. And actually, I haven't seen a ton of chili recipes that have potatoes, but I was kind of inspired by the famous Hungarian goulash. The potatoes need to cook, so we cover with some water and simmer for about 30 minutes, which is convenient because the chili kind of needs this time to simmer just by itself to develop flavor. So when the potatoes are cooked, you're kind of done, and congrats, now you got meals for days. I like to top it with some yogurt and some cilantro if you don't have that weird soap thingy, and enjoy.
I am so excited for this bowl of food right here. I'm starving. It smells incredible. Let me taste this stuff. It's just not fair. It's just not fair for other foods. This is just the superior food. So first of all, it's delicious, but you already probably knew that. But the best part about this chili is that you can put it in the fridge. I think it's gonna last me 4 solid days. And somehow, every time you reheat it up, it feels like it's almost better. What you can also do is put it in little glass containers and freeze that shit. And every time you wanna eat, just pop it in the microwave. Boom, chili time. Here's the calories and the macros if you care about that kind of shit, because currently I'm trying to lose weight, so I'm tracking it. But now I got something even better for you guys. But before that, I gotta make some money. So let me tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online platform and an app where you can get therapy. I've been going through my own little mental health crisis, and probably a lot of other people. But of course, a lot of people do not take proper care of their mental health. Therapy is a really, really useful tool that can help you cope a little bit better. It can help you understand yourself and your problem. Unfortunately, a lot of the times therapy is very expensive, very inaccessible, and it just takes a ridiculous amount of time to get an appointment. So a pretty good option if you're looking to get into therapy right away is BetterHelp. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire about your situation, and then they match you with a professional licensed therapist within, most of the times, 48 hours. These therapists are trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice, and just overall guide you through your journey. And it's all within an app, which is pretty cool. You can schedule out sessions with your therapist whenever it's convenient for you. Plus, if you don't like them for whatever reason, you can switch them up, no additional cost to you. So if you feel like you can benefit from that, go to betterhelp.com/pork you'll get a discount. It also really helps me if you use the code. Either way, take care of your mind, take it easy. You got this.
Okay, now let's move on to Kevin's special chili. And I'm not even gonna say anything before. Just observe the steps and think of all the layers of flavor we're building. So first of all, I'm gonna start with some Mexican dried peppers. I have 3 different types here: pasilla, guajillo, and ancho. These are smoky, deep, and almost fruity in flavor. To make them nice and soft, we're gonna cover them in hot water for like 3-4 minutes, and after that, transfer them to your local blender with some salt, and also if you want a little extra kick, chipotles and adobo sauce are a wonderful addition.
Such a stupid.
Anyways, now that we have that done, we can heat up our trendy looking Dutch oven. And I live in the Netherlands, so it's pretty cool because you just get them for free here. I'm gonna add in some ground beef, some salt, and just, of course, cook it down until it's cooked. You know the steps. Remove it, and now we're gonna start the magic. I got some chorizo here that I'm squeezing out in this hot pot. And I don't want to hear any jokes about me squeezing sausages. We're over that type of humor in the cooking community, okay? Give them some very nice color and go in with some chopped bell pepper and onion. Fuck yeah, look at that. Your whole house is gonna smell amazing. Your neighbors are probably gonna be like, damn, someone in this place been cooking, you know? And at that point, we're gonna add just a whole bunch of spices, some smoky stuff, some garlicky stuff, get them nice and toasted, wake up those flavors. Then here's what's gonna turn this way the fuck up. Some brown sugar and some cocoa powder. Yeah, deglaze that with some chicken stock. Now you may be thinking, wait, I didn't know we're making hot chocolate, Kevin. This will not taste like chocolate at all, but it's gonna give our chili some complexity or mystery, maybe, if that makes any sense. Add our beef back. That was my nickname in college. And now we're gonna add tomato paste and my secret ingredient, some Lao Ganma chili crisp. I don't know what this woman put in this stuff. It might be crack, but it's downright addictive. So you know I'm adding that in. Oh, and also remember that pepper mix we made? We'll add that in. Oops, forgot the garlic. A can of tomatoes. This is a quick recipe, so how can we forget about the beans? Honestly, I have zero respect for a beanless chili. Some potatoes, some more stock to cook the potatoes, and we're gonna gently simmer this for about 1 hour in the oven at 160 Celsius, whatever that shit is in Fahrenheit, I don't know, 300 something. And here's the result.
So, I've almost never been more excited to taste something. I'll eat it straight from the pot, I don't even care. Oh. It really annoys me when food creators do that kind of shit. Like maybe they make an average thing and then they're like, but guys, honestly, this shit is incredible. It's maybe one of the best things I've ever made. So look, definitely choose the convenient option if you're looking for a quick, really good thing. But every once in a while, if you want to impress your friends or impress yourself, you know, self-care is important. Please give this a shot. There's so much depth.
They're willing to work for certain wages. But later on, it was expanded and applied to a variety of different situations, including biology, international relations, and even interpersonal relations like friendship and parenting and family relations. One of the things that game theory has really shown us through recent study has been interactions that we oftentimes think as zero-sum or competitive are not as competitive as they seem. In situations like in the Cold War, which most people thought that's got to be a zero-sum game if anything is, we discovered that actually there were opportunities for mutual cooperation. Arms reduction treaties are a great example. The U.S. and the USSR figured out that if they could find a way to cooperate, they could both save an enormous amount of money and effort by reducing the number of weapons that they had. Reagan and Gorbachev negotiated the START treaty with one another. And one of the big problems that they have is, how can you be sure that while you're eliminating nuclear weapons, your adversary is also eliminating nuclear weapons? So rather than saying, we're just going to get rid of some large percentage of our nuclear weapons and hope that the USSR would do so as well, they broke up the interaction into a bunch of little tiny ones. So the USSR would eliminate just a few nuclear weapons, then the US would eliminate just a few nuclear weapons. They would check, and then they would go on to the next stage. And then each would eliminate a few more, and they'd go on to the next stage. This process of taking a big interaction and breaking it down into little small parts can change a bad social dilemma into a positive interaction. What I do in my personal life, and I think almost everyone can do in their personal life, is to try and think, in this interaction, what outcome would be good for both parties, and how can we achieve that outcome? And by thinking about everything in that way, we oftentimes transform something that seems like a situation where there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser into one where nobody feels like they've lost and everybody benefits.
John Van Norman based game theory on the stripped down version of poker.
In any given poker situation, you're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, and it's all about how to make the best decision in any given moment. And that's so integral to life. Everything we try to do, should we take this route or that route? Should I go here on vacation or there? It's all about dealing with uncertainties and probabilities of things happening. And poker is a very fun and easy way to teach someone how to do that. First rule of thumb is how to extract the most money or chips from your opponent when you have a strong hand, and how to lose the minimum when you have a weak hand. You're never going to be 100% certain where you are. Are you beating them, or do you have a worse hand? So you have to sort of construct a strategy that is mathematically optimal in each situation. The most damaging bias that can come up in poker, and I also think very often in life, is the sunk cost fallacy, where you'll have a lot of chips, perhaps almost all of your stack is in the middle, and yet you are 85 to 90% confident that you have the worst hand. Putting another chip in the pot is probably not a good idea, but we'll often go to ourselves, well, I've gone this far, I've put this much in, I might as well see it through to the end. But if you have very strong information that actually from this point onwards, putting more money in the pot is a bad idea, then you shouldn't. But we have this belief that, well, I've put this much time in, or this much effort, that we should continue on. That can be very, very costly.
Once you start paying attention to the sunk cost fallacy, once it's on your radar, you'll probably notice at least a few things that you wish you were doing differently. Those might be small scale. In my case, I'm now much more willing to abandon a book that I've realized I'm not enjoying and not getting any value out of, rather than trudging dutifully through the remainder of the book just because I've already come 100 pages. These changes might also be large scale. For example, I was in a PhD program and at a certain point realized with increasing certainty that I wasn't happy in this field and would probably be better off switching, and that the only reason that I had stuck with it as long as I had was because of my fear of confronting the sunk cost of 4 to 5 years that I'd spent preparing for and working in the PhD. And sometimes it really does take time to fully acknowledge to yourself that you don't have any good reason to stick with the job or PhD or project that you've been working on so long, because sunk costs are painful. But at least having the sunk cost fallacy on your radar means that you have the opportunity, at least, to push past that and make the choice that instead will lead to the better outcomes for your future.
Game theory spent much of its early days analyzing zero-sum games, where one party's going to win and the other party's going to lose, and trying to figure out what's the best strategy. What game theorists have figured out is that in zero-sum games, the best strategy to pursue when you're against a sophisticated opponent is to adopt the strategy which minimizes your maximum loss. This is sometimes called the mini-max strategy. So the idea is you think, what's the worst case scenario for me? What could my opponent do that would make me worse off? And then you figure out, what's the best strategy against that? So you're minimizing your maximum loss. Game theorists prove that if you use this way of thinking, minimizing your maximum loss, You ensure that no matter how sophisticated your opponent is, you've guarded against the worst case scenario. And not only that, but in zero-sum games, you've done the best you can possibly do.
Get smarter, faster with videos from the world's biggest thinkers. To learn even more from the world's biggest thinkers, get Big Think Plus for your business.
这是我第一次吃火锅配花椒油，这个分量在成都得摆2盘菜，整整齐齐，一定是动火，2两就可以把我打发了。Hello， 大家好，我最近在汉源，到这边找红花椒，顺便来都来了，再探个店。今天探的店是这一家加油站黄牛肉，这家店是当地的粉丝推荐给我的，然后据说他们家黄牛肉做的还不错，可以来试一下。他这里我估计以前还有可能真是加油站，他们本地居民卖一些干货。哎，老板，他们齐国人。
就是牛杂，你看和到成3斤在下面切。
你这个牛是提前煮好了，放在汤里头做火锅吃是吧？像鸳鸯锅嘛，鸳鸯锅那个汤底跟这个是一样的。
跟它是一样的。
好，那可不可以牛我先点一斤，牛杂点一斤，原牛肉点一份嘛。牛老花是新鲜的吗？是新鲜的嘛？来一份。鸡翅来一份。
我干笋大宽面。
干笋。大宽面。好嘛，鲜黄瓜。你们这个店以前是加油站是吧？
以前家盘加油站，都是以前关的。
是真正的加油站是吧？
以前家盘加油站。
哦，后头你们改建。买起来了吧？哦，后头才是开的这个。
前头还没得这种的，后来
你们开多久啊
？08年第3个开。
哦。了解，那先帮你们上菜了。这个茶标。这刚出了这个的。哦哟，好快哟。哦。这是青花椒还是红花椒？红花椒啊。好。这是筋是吧？好，做下来了之后，这里是1、2、3、4、5个东西，豆豉加菇啊，加了辣椒炒的一个东西，然后这个是应该是大头菜，这个是折耳根，对，这个是小葱，然后这个是油里面有蒜，有辣椒，我尝一下是什么油。哇，它这个油它是芝麻油，还有一个很明显就是有花椒油。好，先下肉吧，就这样下。其实它这个是辣的啊，这个就是提前烧好的牛肉，烧入味了，再放到里面烫一下。我觉得他烧这个牛肉应该也放了不少花椒，这个里面有肚子。对吧？是油炸，一样都有一点，有牛头皮，先带个围腰，我穿的白衣服。它这个围腰，哎呦，是塑料的。哎，哦，搞明白了，原来是这样子的。我是第一次带这么简陋的围腰。这要是我以后开火锅店的话，我这高低得上一个质量稍微好一点的。好，我先来打一个料。这个料呢，你看它都是调好了，打一点这个，加点油，然后加点这个吧，加点大头菜，加点折耳根，加点葱，应该就是这样。这是我第一次吃火锅配花椒油，少放一点，万一太麻了。我先尝一下汤底，就这个牛骨汤的感觉。再尝一下这个油，这个牛骨汤的感觉很鲜。尝一下这个油，这个不算辣，特别柔和，不像川味火锅里面，它那个很冲，这个一点都不辣。尝一点牛肉。 这牛肉90块钱一斤啊，放到这里面来嚼一下。你看这个牛肉，我觉得有点像是牛腩的部位，有筋膜，有一点肥的，有瘦的。它的口感正好，既不烂，又咬得动。开始不说它这个麻呀，真麻呀，我只加了一点点花椒油，很麻。再尝一块，再吃一块原味的。哦，你看，它还是有这种比较瘦的地方。我觉得它的牛肉有好几个部位，有牛腩，有牛排，还有牛腿。你们看一下这个肌纤维，看到没有？这个就比较难嚼了。我还是比较喜欢牛腩那个部位。哇，老板说每人半斤，我觉得不用半斤，2两就可以把我打发了。这个我就能吃饱了。如果说能够再做趴一点，就不会成为负担。有肥有瘦的地方吃起来就很合适。像这种纯瘦的，比较考验你们的牙齿。然后90块钱一斤，它这个一斤我掂了一下，真的是有1斤。包括你看这一盘，在外面的话就是一个条盘，上面放12根或者多少。它这个的话，我觉得应该有3两。用这个分量在成都得摆2碗去，没有垫东西。你可以看一下这个，对吧？没有垫东西，所以我觉得这个在景区啊还是比较难得的。你要知道，景区的餐饮都是做一次性生意的。它这个牛肉我觉得还是挺好吃的，虽然说味道不突出，对吧？牛肉的本味有。我跟大家下面就是垫了蔬菜的，这个应该也不少，应该有3两多一点。这个牛肉材料是好材料，就是没腌好。尝一下这个鲜的牛脑花，我之前吃猪脑花吃的比较多，牛脑花吃的比较少。先尝一个，先放这里多煮一下，再放点黄花菜，这边放点黄花菜，再加2片宽面。这个面条上次来拍坛子肉的时候我吃过一次，我觉得面条比较好吃。好，脑花可以了，看一下脑花。哇，感觉会比猪脑要长一点。我感觉牛脑花，新鲜的牛脑花比猪脑花稍微韧一点点，然后其他的话感觉会稍微好一些。牛脑花不错，我喜欢。我看一下多少斤吧。哇，牛脑花35块钱一份，这里应该抵得上4个猪脑花。看一下这个新鲜的黄花菜是什么样子。这黄花菜很脆，我之前也吃过，之前吃的比这个更小。这黄花菜口感还挺不错的，再吃个面条，哇，这个我就觉得如果说火锅里面能够配这种宽面的话也很好。这种宽面我倒是觉得具一大特色，这个跟我之前吃的面条都不一样。第一它很宽，第二它口感很好，就是给我的感觉不太会容易翻面的那种感觉，不会起坨。现在整体体验下来呢，它这个火锅就是普通的味道，它的肉比较实在，包括这种肉啊、脑花啊，它是实实在在的端上来给你称1斤，它这个是熟的时候的1斤。鲜牛肉的1斤只能出这种煮出来的7、8两的，它是有水分的，所以说90块钱1斤，价格听起来好像不便宜，但是它是实实在在的。作为消费者的立场，我觉得它有几个缺点。第一个缺点是它的牛肉必须1斤1斤的点，我觉得如果说1个人、2个人的话，可能干不了。能把牛肉吃完就吃不了别的菜。如果它能够出3两、6两、9两这样子来的话，我觉得能吃到更多别的一些东西。就是一句话说白了，人少了不好点菜，我觉得这是它目前的一个缺点。然后就是别的菜的分量的话，都会比成都的火锅店都会好很多很多。好，那个么大家一起吃饭。多少钱？3号酒。好的。这个594元，500块。 你们这个牛是新鲜的吗？还是冻货？现杀的吗？每天都现杀吗？
每天都杀。我们那个碰上还有一个店，我妈在那儿吃。
哦。你们牛是煮了之后再来切的块块吗？
经过啊。
啊，煎了之后再切。
把鸡啊切一切，然后到时候把料泡好之后要把灰去切，然后煮出来料汤的。
好。你们的二楼也做的是不？二楼也包间，你们总共要多大那个？50多人对，同时有那个300-400人用餐，差不多啊。一楼有14张桌子左右，然后楼上也差不多，然后出来这个位置还有包间，1、2、3、4个包间，这个就是以前的加油站嘛。然后这里还有一个大厅，这个大厅还有5张桌子，二楼也可以坐是不？然后刚才逛了一下，总共有50多张台，能够容纳300-400人用餐嘛，高峰期的时候。对，它的规模还是不小的。现在我们7个人已经吃完了，总共是500块钱，人均大概70块钱左右。牛肉吃的比较满足，然后别的菜分量也不小。再一个就是作为游客来讲，来这个地方一碗牛肉里面，我觉得最好能够分出多少肥配多少瘦，或者是能够3两的加，不要1斤1斤就是90块。如果人少还真吃不完。我总共吃了7块牛肉，我就吃不下了。后面的东西我也肚子不太能够装了，因为你那个牛肉实在是太沉肚子了。如果能够做出一些利于消费者的一些改动，那我就觉得就更好了。这个推荐指数的话，反正你只要来汉源，正好经过这一条路，你想去摘什么？摘花椒啊，车厘子和花椒的话呢，我倒是觉得你可以回去的时候顺便在这里吃个饭。如果你说从成都什么开车几百公里过来的话，完全没有必要。给我个人的感受，在景区里面的饭店还是比较实在的，味道呢中规中矩，就是这样。
Dark forest hypothesis. The dark forest hypothesis says that we haven't been in contact with other alien species because they've been hiding from each other, remaining silent to survive. If aliens are intelligent enough to have the technology to contact us, they likely also have the technology to destroy us, be it through genetically engineered viruses or through star laser weapons. Even if these alien species are benevolent, they could look at us just like we look at ants and try to harvest every resource from Earth without caring, or they could look at us as a future potential threat, preferring to destroy us before we become a problem. Technological singularity. If AI reaches a point where it can self-reproduce and create smarter versions of itself at an uncontrollable and unpredictable rate, its growth cannot be reversed, creating a rapid increase or explosion of intelligence that far surpasses the human one, rendering humans obsolete and showing us what natural selection can do. It could lead to a battle for resources, with the machines wanting them for reproducing themselves and the humans wanting them for surviving, creating a war that has an obvious outcome. Even if the AI doesn't mean to harm us, its actions could still be dangerous. For example, if it's trying to solve a problem, it might change the environment in ways that make it hard for humans to survive, as they mathematically deem that solution to be worth more than our survival. Genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is a double-edged sword, enabling incredible medical progress, but also giving humans, who are not known for always having the best intentions, the knowledge to hack organisms. It's only a matter of time before the tools and knowledge to create an undetectable, incredibly contagious, and deadly virus are accessible to everyone. Even if not on purpose, errors could be made either in the genetic modification of an animal or in its containment, making it possible for an animal with no natural predators and a fast reproduction rate to exist, causing irreversible damage to the ecosystem. This is arguably one of the most probable causes of extinction, in my opinion. Strangelets. Strangelets are a type of particle that is very different from the ones that make up everything we know, like atoms, and are created in the superdense core of a neutron star. It's hypothesized that when these strange particles touch normal matter, they could start a chain reaction, turning everything they touch into more strangelets. The problem is that neutron stars could potentially spew out these strangelets after a collision, making it possible for them to casually reach Earth, even though it's highly unlikely. Gamma ray burst. Gamma ray bursts are extremely powerful and bright flashes of very high energy light, being the second most energetic event in the universe after the Big Bang. They can be caused by things like exploding stars or merging neutron stars, and if one of these hits Earth, the ozone layer would be destroyed, leaving us vulnerable to UV rays and ending life on Earth. It's pretty unlikely, though, as one of the focused beams has to be pointed towards us, and the gamma ray burst should happen within our galaxy. Technological stagnation. If humanity hits a point where the exponential technological progression we've had until now hits a roadblock, either caused by a lack of resources needed for advanced technologies or a physical impossibility to go further, we can be stopped from colonies in other galaxies, making our extinction caused by any other reason much more likely. Not only that, but we can have future problems with resources, as without improvements in agriculture and water management, we might not be able to feed everyone, leading to starvation and conflicts over resources. Without new medical technology, a new disease could spread uncontrollably and kill a large portion of the human population. And without new anti-climate change technologies, the world could become inhabitable. Vacuum decay. It's the hypothesis that the universe we live in might not be perfectly stable. Imagine that our universe is like a ball resting in a small dent on a hill. Everything is fine as long as the ball stays in the dent. But if it somehow gets pushed out of the dent, it could roll down the hill into a deeper, more stable dent. If that happens, a bubble of true vacuum, which is much more stable than ours, gets created and starts expanding at the speed of light, changing the rules of physics as it goes. Anything inside the bubble would be destroyed because the particles that make up matter and energy would no longer behave the same way. And the scary thing is that such a bubble could already be expanding, and we wouldn't know, since the bubble travels at the speed of light, and we can't see it coming. Gray goo. If a future engineer is able to create nanobots so small that you can't see them without a microscope, but designed to build more of themselves using every material around them because of exponential growth, we would be swarmed by them, even if one of them got out, and we wouldn't notice until it's too late. They would pretty much be impossible to stop, using every material the Earth has to reproduce, creating a gray goo. Supervolcanoes. Supervolcano eruptions, although pretty rare, could happen within the next few centuries. Luckily, we can predict them in time, since scientists can detect the pressure building up. When one erupts, not only will the local area be damaged by the massive explosions, lava flows that obliterate anything in their path, and an ashfall that can collapse buildings, suffocate living creatures, and contaminate water supplies, but there will also be global damages, mainly caused by the ash cloud that will block out the sun, causing a big drop in temperatures, called volcanic winter. Cosmic strings. Cosmic strings are strange, super thin, and incredibly long objects that scientists think might exist in the universe. They are like cracks in space, leftovers from when the universe was very young. If a cosmic string passed through our solar system, it could cut through space like a knife because of its incredible energy, and it would create strong gravitational forces, which could disrupt the orbits of planets and moons. So we either get sliced in two, or we get sent to the void. Antibiotic crisis. Right now, antibiotics make it easy to get rid of infections and do routine medical procedures, but as time passes, bacteria are getting more and more resistant to all of them. If we use more antibiotics, bacteria have a higher chance of becoming stronger against them, which is one of the reasons why it's advised to not use antibiotics without being checked by a doctor. Another reason that this happens is because the agriculture industry heavily uses them to grow food. Some projections say that if we don't discover new treatments, we could see common infections become once again life-threatening, with around 10 million deaths annually. The bad news is that research is not incentivized because it's expensive and not that profitable, as new antibiotics are usually useful against a small number of bacteria, lowering sales numbers, and one-time treatments like vaccines need to be taken only once, also causing low sales numbers. Nuclear war. There are currently around 13,000 nuclear warheads, and if every single one of them exploded, a percentage between 50 and 80% of the human population would either die immediately or in the long term. The surviving ones would find themselves in a very hostile environment, with the nuclear winter caused by a lowering of temperatures due to smoke being sent into the atmosphere and blocking out sunlight. This would cause catastrophic damage to agriculture and create food shortages. They'd also have to fight radiation that would cause severe health problems, including cancer and genetic mutations. The radiation could contaminate food and water supplies, further reducing the population over time. Climate change. Earth could become inhabitable if we hit certain tipping points. We are currently at 1.1 degrees Celsius of global warming. But if we hit 1.5, the Greenland ice sheet would start melting, which could raise sea levels by up to 7 meters over centuries, and the newly revealed ocean would start absorbing energy from the sun, further warming the region. Also, the ground without the reflective ice and water around it would heat up faster, speeding up the melt by around 60%. At that same temperature, the permafrost would start a snowball effect, causing organic matter once trapped in ice to be free and start decomposing, releasing CO2 and methane, which is much more dangerous than CO2, by the way, heating it up even more, releasing more organic matter, and so on. Permafrost melting can also cause ancient viruses and bacteria that humans have never encountered before to be released, potentially leading to new diseases. Between 1.1 and 2 degrees Celsius, we can experience the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation weakening.
which would cause a giant flow of water that acts as a pathway for heat to travel from the southern hemisphere to the northern one all the way to Greenland. A partial collapse would cause Europe to enter a mini ice age. Between 2 and 3 degrees Celsius, we have the disruption of monsoon systems, which can impact the lives of around 1 billion people and complicate global food supplies. At the same temperature, we can see the Amazon forest dieback, which is the point where the forest dries out, loses its ability to recover, and becomes savanna, which would cause the release of large amounts of CO2, further accelerating global warming and reduced rainfall in the region, causing problems in agriculture with potential food shortages. Massive asteroid. To cause human extinction, an asteroid would need to be around 10 kilometers in diameter, like the one that caused the extinction of dinosaurs. It's pretty difficult for this to happen, since scientists are monitoring every big asteroid in our vicinity, and thanks to experiments like the DART mission, designed to test and demonstrate a method of asteroid deflection by intentionally crashing a spacecraft into an asteroid at high speed, we can hypothesize that we might be able to avoid a complete catastrophe. Transhumanism. In modern times, biological evolution for humans has slowed down because we've created ways to adapt to our environment, using technology rather than relying on natural changes in our bodies. Technological advancement, however, continues at a rapid pace, matter of fact, at a much faster pace than biological evolution. This has led to the concept of transhumanism, where technology is used to enhance human abilities beyond natural limits. We could edit our genes to adapt ourselves to other planets, thus making different human subspecies. One of the most extreme ideas in transhumanism is digital consciousness, which involves uploading human minds into computers or creating a hive mind where many people's thoughts and experiences are interconnected, functioning as a super intelligent single entity. At this point, we need incredibly different organisms to roam around the world and gather resources, putting humanity as we define it to an end, but keeping humans alive in another new form. Heat death. The universe might be heading towards heat death in trillions of years from now, which is a theoretical future where the universe has expanded so much that it becomes very cold and empty. Eventually, there will be no more energy differences, meaning no heat, light, or activity anywhere. Everything will be spread out evenly at a very low temperature, leading to a dark, lifeless universe where nothing new can happen. So even if we survive all of the other threats, we will still die at the end, even though there's speculation that a new Big Bang might happen in the future, creating another universe. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord. Link in the description.
Hello， 大家好，我是王刚。本期视频跟大家分享的家常菜鱼香肉丝重庆版。首先，我们准备新鲜的里脊肉300克，把里脊肉切成2.5毫米左右的大肉片。新鲜的猪肉比较有韧劲。
They instantly withered to their roots. After referring to the wonderful works of Jesus, he says that although Jesus had such power, he did not use it to injure anyone, but seemed always inclined to help the poor. Values says the Jews were divided in their opinion of him, the poorer class claiming him as their king and their deliverer from Roman authority, and that if Jesus should raise an army and give it the power, he could sweep the world in a single day. But the rich Jews hated and cursed him behind his back and called him an Egyptian necromancer, though they were as afraid of him as of death. Values Watercoolers, Book 72, found in Vatican at Rome. And here's the Pilates report. To Tiberius Caesar, Emperor of Rome. Noble sovereign, greeting. The events of the last few days in my province have been of such a character that I will give the details in full as they occurred, as I should not be surprised if, in the course of time, they may change the destiny of our nation, for it seems of late that all the gods have ceased to be propitious. I am almost ready to say, cursed be the day that I succeeded Valerius Flacius in the government of Judea, for since then my life has been one of continual uneasiness and distress. On my arrival at Jerusalem, I took possession of the praetorium and ordered a splendid feast to be prepared, to which I invited the Tetrarch of Galilee with the high priest and his officers. At the appointed hour, no guests appeared. This I considered an insult offered to my dignity and to the whole government which I represent. A few days after, the high priest deigned to pay me a visit. His deportment was grave and deceitful. He pretended that his religion forbade him and his attendants to sit at the table of the Romans and eat and offer libations with them. But this was only a sanctimonious seeming, for his very countenance betrayed his hypocrisy. Although I thought it expedient to accept his excuse from that moment, I was convinced that the conquered had declared themselves the enemy of the conquerors, and I would warn the Romans to beware of the high priests of this country. They would betray their own mother to gain office and a luxurious living. It seems to me that of conquered cities, Jerusalem is the most difficult to govern. So turbulent are the people that I live in momentary dread of an insurrection. I have not soldiers sufficient to suppress it. I had only 1 centurion and 100 men at my command. I requested a reinforcement from the prefect of Syria, who informed me that he had scarcely troops sufficient to defend his own province. An insatiate thirst for conquest to extend our empire beyond the means of defending it, I fear, will be the cause of the final overthrow of our whole government. I lived secluded from the masses, for I did not know what those priests might influence the rabble to do. Yet I endeavored to ascertain, as far as I could, the mind and standing of the people. Among the various rumors that came to my ears, there was one in particular that attracted my attention. A young man, it was said, had appeared in Galilee, preaching with a noble unction a new law in the name of the God that had sent him. At first, I was apprehensive that his design was to stir up the people against the Romans, but my fears were soon dispelled. Jesus of Nazareth spoke rather as friend of the Romans than of the Jews. One day, in passing by the place of Siloam, where there was a great concourse of people, I observed in the midst of the group a young man who was leaning against a tree, calmly addressing the multitude. I was told it was Jesus. This I could easily have suspected, so great was the difference between him and those listening to him. His golden-colored hair and beard gave his appearance a celestial aspect. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. Never have I seen a sweeter or more serene countenance. What a contrast between him and his hearers, with their black beards and tawny complexions. Unwillingly to interrupt him by my presence, I continued my walk, but signified to my secretary to join the group and listen. My secretary's name is Manlius. He is the grandson of the chief of the conspirators who kept in Etruria, waiting for Catiline. Manlius has been for a long time an inhabitant of Judea, and is well acquainted with the Hebrew language. He was devoted to me and worthy of my confidence. On entering the praetorium, I found Manlius, who related to me the words Jesus has pronounced at Siloam. Never have I read in the works of the philosophers anything that can compare to the maxims of Jesus. One of the rebellious Jews, so numerous in Jerusalem, having asked Jesus if it was lawful to give tribute to Caesar, he replied, "Render unto Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and unto God the things that are God's." It was on account of the wisdom of his saying that I granted so much liberty to the Nazarene, for it was in my power to have had him arrested and exiled to Pontus. But that would have been contrary to the justice which has always characterized the Roman government in all its dealings with men. This man was neither seditious nor rebellious. I extended to him my protection, unknown perhaps to himself. He was at liberty to act, to speak, to assemble and address the people, and to choose disciples unrestrained by any praetorian mandate. Should it ever happen, may the gods avert the omen, should it ever happen, I say, that the religion of our forefathers will be supplanted by the religion of Jesus, it will be to this noble toleration that Rome shall owe her premature death, while I, miserable wretch, will have been the instrument of what the Jews call providence and we call destiny. This unlimited freedom granted to Jesus provoked the Jews, not the poor, but the rich and powerful. It is true, Jesus was severe on the latter, and this was a political reason, in my opinion, for not restraining the liberty of the Nazarene. Scribes and Pharisees, he would say to them, "You are a race of vipers. You resemble painted sepulchres. You appear well unto men, but you have death within you." At other times he would sneer at the alms of the rich and proud. telling them that the might of the poor was more precious in the sight of God. Complaints were daily made at the praetorium against the insolence of Jesus. I was even informed that some misfortune would befall him, that it would not be the first time that Jerusalem had stoned those who called themselves prophets. An appeal would be made to Caesar. However, my conduct was approved by the Senate, and I was promised a reinforcement after the termination of the Parthian War. Being too weak to suppress an insurrection, I resolved upon adopting a measure that promised to restore the tranquility of the city without subjecting the praetorium to humiliating concession. I wrote to Jesus, requesting an interview with him at the praetorium. He came. You know that in my veins flows the Spanish mixed with Roman blood, as incapable of fear as it is of weak emotion. When the Nazarene made his appearance, I was walking in my basilic, and my feet seemed fastened with an iron hand to the marble pavement, and I trembled in every limb as does a guilty culprit, though the Nazarene was as calm as innocence itself. When he came up to me, he stopped, and by a signal, he seemed to say to me, I am here, though he spoke not a word. For some time, I contemplated with admiration and awe this extraordinary type of man, a type of man unknown to our numerous painters, who have given form and figure to all the gods and the heroes. There was nothing about him that was repelling in its character, yet I felt too awed and tremulous to approach him. Jesus, said I unto him at last, and my tongue faltered, Jesus of Nazareth, for the last 3 years I have granted you ample freedom of speech, nor do I regret it. Your words are those of a sage. I know not whether you have read Socrates or Plato, but this I know, there is in your discourses a majestic simplicity that elevates you far above those philosophers. The emperor is informed of it, and I, his humble representative in this country, am glad of having allowed you that liberty of which you are so worthy. However, I must not Tiber sometimes clothes himself with the skin of the sheep to accomplish his wicked designs. I will protect you against them. My praetorium shall be an asylum, sacred both day and night. Jesus carelessly shook his head and said with a grave and divine smile, when the day shall have come, there will be no asylums for the Son of Man, neither in the earth nor under the earth. The asylum of the just is there, pointing to the heavens. That which is written in the books of the prophets must be accomplished. Young man, I answered mildly, you will oblige me to convert my request into an order. The safety of the province which has been confided to my care requires it. You must observe more moderation in your discourses. Do not infringe my order. You know the consequences. May happiness attend you. Farewell. Prince of the earth, replied Jesus, I come not to bring war into the world, but peace, love, and charity. I was born the same day on which Augustus Caesar gave peace to the Roman world. Persecutions proceeded not from me. I expect it from others, and will meet it in obedience to the will of my Father, who has shown me the way. Restrain, therefore, your worldly prudence. It is not in your power to arrest the victim at the foot of the tabernacle of expiation. So saying, he disappeared like a bright shadow behind the curtains of the basilic, to my great relief, for I felt a heavy burden on me, of which I could not relieve myself while in his presence. To Herod, who then reigned in Galilee, the enemies of Jesus addressed themselves to wreak their vengeance on the Nazarene. And Herod consulted his own inclinations. He would have ordered Jesus immediately to be put to death, but though proud of his royal dignity, yet he hesitated to commit an act that might lessen his influence with the Senate or, like me, was afraid of Jesus. But it would never do for a Roman officer to be scared by a Jew. Previously to this, Herod called on me on the praetorium, and on rising to take leave, after some trifling conversation, asked me what was my opinion concerning the Nazarene. I replied that Jesus appeared to me to be one of those great philosophers that great nations sometimes produce, that his doctrines were by no means sacrilegious, and that the intentions of Rome were to leave him to that freedom of speech which was justified by his actions. Herod smiled maliciously, and saluting me with ironical respect, departed. The great feast of the Jews was approaching, and the intention was to avail themselves of the popular exultation which always manifests itself at the solemnities of a Passover. The city was overflowing with a tumultuous populace, clamoring for the death of the Nazarene. My emissaries informed me that the treasure of the temple had been employed in bribing the people. The danger was pressing. A Roman centurion had been insulted. I wrote to the prefect of Syria for 100 foot soldiers and as many cavalry. He declined. I saw myself alone with a handful of veterans in the midst of a rebellious city, too weak to suppress an uprising, and having no choice left but to tolerate it. They had seized upon Jesus, and the seditious rabble, although they had nothing to fear from the praetorium, believing as their leaders had told them that I winked at their sedition, continued vociferating, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" 3 powerful parties had combined together at that time against Jesus. First, the Herodians and the Sadducees, whose seditious conduct seemed to have proceeded from double motives. They hated the Nazarene and were impatient of the Roman yoke. They never forgave me for having entered the holy city with banners that bore the image of the Roman emperor. And although in this instance I had committed a fatal error, yet the sacrilege did not appear less heinous in their eyes. Another grievance also ranked in their bosoms. I had proposed to employ a part of the treasure of the temple in erecting edifices for public use. My proposal was scorned. The Pharisees were the avowed enemies of Jesus. They cared not for the government. They bore with bitterness the severe reprimands which the Nazarene for 3 years had been continually giving them wherever he went. Timid and too weak to act by themselves, they had embraced the quarrels of the Herodians and the Sadducees. Besides these 3 parties, I had to contend against the reckless and profligate populace, always ready to join a sedition and to profit by the disorder and confusion that resulted therefrom. Jesus was dragged before the high priest and condemned to death. It was then that the high priest Caiaphas performed the divisory act of submission. He sent his prisoner to me to confirm his condemnation and secure his execution. I answered him that, as Jesus was a Galilean, the affair came under Herod's jurisdiction, and ordered him to be sent thither. The wily tetrarch professed humility, and protesting his deference to the lieutenant of Caesar, he committed the fate of the man to my hands. Soon my palace assumed the aspect of a besieged citadel. Every moment increased the number of the malcontents. Jerusalem was inundated with crowds from the mountains of Nazareth. All Judea appeared to be pouring into the city. I had taken a wife from among the Gauls, who pretended to seem to futurity. Weeping and throwing herself at my feet, she said to me, "Beware, beware, and not touch that man, for he is holy. Last night I saw him in a vision. He was walking on the waters. He was flying on the wings of the wind. He spoke to the tempest and to the fishes of the lake. All were obedient to him. Behold, the torrent in Mount Kedron flows with blood. The statues of Caesar are filled with Gemini. The columns of the Imperium have given way, and the sun is veiled in mourning like a vessel in the tomb. Ah, Pilate, evil awaits thee. If thou wilt not listen to the vows of thy wife, dread the curse of a Roman Senate, dread the frowns of Caesar." By this time the marble stairs groaned under the weight of the multitude. The Nazarene was brought back to me. I proceeded to the halls of justice, followed by my guard, and asked the people in a severe tone what they demanded. "The death of the Nazarene," was the reply. "For what crime? He has blasphemed. He has prophesied the ruin of the temple. He calls himself the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of the Jews. Roman justice," said I, "punishes not such offenses with death. Crucify him! Crucify him! cried the relentless rabble. The vociferation of the infuriated mob shook the palace to its foundations. There was but one who appeared to be calm in the midst of the vast multitude. It was the Nazarene. After many fruitless attempts to protect him from the fury of his merciless persecutors, I adopted a measure which at the moment appeared to me to be the only one that could save his life. I proposed, as it was their custom, to deliver a prisoner on such occasions, to release Jesus and let him go free, that he might be the scapegoat, as they called it. But they said Jesus must be crucified. I then spoke to them of the inconsistency of their course as being incompatible with their laws, showing that no criminal judge could pass sentence on a criminal unless he had fasted one whole day, and that the sentence must have the consent of the Sanhedrin and the signature of the president of that court, that no criminal could be executed on the same day his sentence was fixed, and the next day, on the day of his execution, the Sanhedrin was required to review the whole proceeding. Also, according to their law, a man was stationed at the door of the court with a flag, and another one a short way off on horseback to cry the name of the criminal and his crime and the names of his witnesses, and to know if anyone could testify in his favor. And the prisoner on his way to execution had the right to turn back 3 times and to plead any new thing in his favor. I urged all these pleas, hoping they might awe them into subjection. But they still cried, "Crucify him, crucify him." I then ordered Jesus to be scourged, hoping this might satisfy them. But it only increased their fury. I then called for a basin and washed my hands in the presence of the clamorous multitude, thus testifying that in my judgment Jesus of Nazareth had done nothing deserving of death. But in vain. It was his life these wretches thirsted for. Often in our civil commotions have I witnessed the furious anger of the multitude, but nothing could be compared to what I witnessed on this occasion. It might have been truly said that all the phantoms of the infernal regions had assembled at Jerusalem. The crowd appeared not to walk, but to be borne off and whirled as a vortex, rolling along in living waves from the portals of the praetoriums, even unto Mount Zion, with howling screams, shrieks, and vociferations, such as were never heard in the seditions of the Pannonia or in the tumults of the Forum. By degrees the day darkened like a winter's twilight, such as had been at the death of the great Julius Caesar. It was likewise the Ides of March. I, the continued governor of a rebellious province, was leaning against the column of my basilic, contemplating at worth the dreary gloom these fiends of Tartarus dragging to execution the innocent Nazarene. All around me was deserted. Jerusalem had vomited forth her indwellers through the funeral gate that leads to Gemonipa. An air of desolation and sadness enveloped me. My guards had joined the cavalry, and the centurion with a display of power was endeavoring to keep order. I was left alone, and my breaking heart admonished me that what was passing at the moment appertained rather to the history of the gods than that of man. A loud clamor was heard proceeding from Golgotha, which borne on the wind seemed to announce an agony such as was never heard by mortal ears. Dark clouds lowered over the pinnacle of the temple, and setting over the city covered it as with a veil. So dreadful were the signs that men sad and pensive. On ascending the stairs, the steps of which were still stained with the blood of the Nazarene, I perceived an old man in a suppliant posture, and behind him several Romans in tears. He threw himself at my feet and wept most bitterly. It is painful to see an old man weep, and my heart being already overcharged with grief, we, though strangers, wept together. And in truth it seemed that the tears lay very shallow that day, with many whom I perceived in the vast concourse of people. I never witnessed such an extreme revulsion of feeling. Those who betrayed and sold him, those who testified against him, those who cried, "Crucify him, we have his blood," all slunk off like cowardly curs and washed their teeth with vinegar. as I am told that Jesus taught a resurrection and a separation after death, if such should be the fact, I am sure it commenced in this vast crowd. Father, said I to him after gaining control of my feelings, who are you, and what is your request? I am Joseph of Arimathea, replied he, and am come to beg of you upon my knees the permission to bury Jesus of Nazareth. Your prayer is granted, said I to him, and at the same time I ordered Manlius to take some soldiers with him to superintend the interment, lest it should be profane. A few days after, the sepulchre was found empty. His disciples proclaimed all over the country that Jesus has risen from the dead, as he had foretold. This created more excitement even than the crucifixion. As to its truth, I cannot say for certain, but I have made some investigation of the matter, so you can examine for yourself and see if I am in fault, as Herod represents. Joseph buried Jesus in his tomb. Whether he contemplated his resurrection or calculated to cut him another, I cannot tell. The day after he was buried, one of the priests came to the praetorium and said they were apprehensive that his disciples intended to steal the body of Jesus and hide it, and then make it appear that he had risen from the dead, as he had foretold, and of which they were perfectly convinced. I sent him to the captain of the royal guard, Malchus, to tell him to take the Jewish soldiers, place as many around the sepulchre as were needed. Then if anything should happen, they could blame themselves and not the Romans. When the great excitement arose about the sepulchre being found empty, I felt a deeper solicitude than ever. I sent for Malchus, who told me he had placed his lieutenant, Ben Isham, with 100 soldiers around the sepulchre. He told me that Isham and the soldiers were very much alarmed at what had occurred there that morning. I sent for this man Isham, who related to me, as near as I can recollect, the following circumstances. He said that at about the beginning of the fourth watch, they saw a soft and beautiful light over the sepulchre. He at first thought that the woman had come to embalm the body of Jesus, as was their custom, but he could not see how they had gotten through the guards. While these thoughts were passing through his mind, behold, the whole place were lighted up, and there seemed to be crowds of the dead in their grave clothes. All seemed to be shouting and filled with ecstasy, while all around and above was the most beautiful music he had ever heard, and the whole air seemed to be full of voices praising God. At this time there seemed to be a reeling and swimming of the earth, so that he turned so sick and faint that he could not stand on his feet. He said the earth seemed to swim from under him, and his senses left him, so that he knew not what did occur. I asked him in what condition he was when he came to himself. He said he was lying on the ground with his face down. I asked him if he could not have been mistaken as to the light. Was it not day that was coming in the east? He said at first he thought of that, but at a stone's cast it was exceedingly dark. And then he remembered it was too early for day. I asked him if his dizziness might not have come from being waken up and getting up too suddenly, as it sometimes had that effect. He said he was not, and had not been asleep all night, as the penalty was death for him to sleep on duty. He said he had let some of the soldiers sleep at a time. Some were asleep then. I asked him how long the scene lasted. He said he did not know, but he thought nearly an hour. He said it was hid by the light of day. I asked him if he went to the sepulchre after he had come to himself. He said no, because he was afraid. But just as soon as relief came, they all went to their quarters. I asked him if he had been questioned by the priests. He said he had. They wanted him to say it was an earthquake, and that they were asleep, and offered him money to say that the disciples came and stole Jesus. But he saw no disciples. He did not know that the body was gone until he was told. I asked him what was the private opinion of those priests he had conversed with. He said that some of them thought that Jesus was no man, that he was not a human being, that he was not a son of Mary, that he was not the same that was said to be born of the Virgin in Bethlehem, that the same person had been on earth before, with Abraham and Lot, and at many times and places. It seems to me that if the Jewish theory be true, these conclusions are correct, for they are in accord with this man's life, as is known and testified by both friends and foes, for the elements were no more in his hands than the clay in the hands of the potter. He could convert water into wine. He could change death into life, disease into health. He could calm the seas, still the storms, call up fish with a silver coin in its mouth. Now I say, if he could do all these things which he did and many more, as the Jews all testify, and it was doing these things that created this enmity against him, he was not charged with criminal offenses, nor was he charged with violating any law, nor of wronging any individual in person. And all these facts are known to thousands as well by his foes and by his friends. I am almost ready to say, as did Manulus at the cross, truly, this was the Son of God. Now, noble sovereign, this is as near the facts in this case as I can arrive at, and I have taken pains to make the statement very full, so that you may judge of my conduct upon the whole, as I hear that Antipater has said many hard things of me in this matter, with the promise of faithfulness and good wishes to my noble sovereign. I am your most obedient servant, Pontius Pilate.
4.
Gaslighting. Gaslighting takes place when someone seeks to make another person doubt their own perception of reality, their own memory, and their sanity. The term originates from a 1938 play called Gaslight, in which a husband manipulates his wife into believing she is going insane by dimming the gaslights in the home and then denying that the lights are flickering when she points it out. Gaslighting undermines the victim's confidence in their own judgment by deploying confusing lies, withholding information, and shifting the blame onto another person while at the same time denying their side of the story and claiming that what the other person is saying is a lie. Guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is when a manipulator makes a victim feel bad about themselves, their actions, or lack of action in a particular situation. For example, if a toxic and negative person isn't invited to a friend's party and he finds out about this, he might say to the friend, "I can't believe you didn't invite me to your party. I thought we were closer than that," to instill feelings of guilt and ensure that he will be invited next time. Isolation. Isolation is when a manipulator cuts a victim off from their friends or family, making sure that no support network exists to interfere with the manipulator's plans. A manipulator does this by undermining the relationship the victim has with their loved ones, and slowly turning them against their friends and family by convincing them that the people they know aren't good for their well-being. On top of this, a manipulator creates dependency with their victim by making them feel like they need their support or approval, instilling fear into the victim so that they think they can't survive without them. This tactic is often used by abusive partners, cults, and online predators. Love bombing. Love bombing is a deceptive tactic where the manipulator showers their victim with affection, attention, and praise to make them falsely believe that they are loved. Using excessive compliments, gifts, and frequent talks of extravagant future plans together, the manipulator expresses intense emotions to make the victim feel like they are the most important person in their abuser's life. When in reality, the only reason they are receiving such false positivity is so that the abuser can quickly gain as much power and control as possible. On top of this, people who love bomb to manipulate will get the victim heavily attached to the praise, and then take it away at a moment's notice to cause the victim to crave it and be more susceptible to the abuser's requests. Historically speaking, it is said that Adolf Hitler used love bombing techniques on his wife, Eva Braun, to keep her close to him while he pursued his destructive political ambitions. Playing the victim. This is a commonly used tactic that even non-abusive or non-manipulative people can accidentally use to avoid taking responsibility for something. It is where a manipulator acts like they are the ones being wronged or hurt, when in reality they are the guilty ones. By blaming other people for their actions and seeking sympathy through the exaggeration of their problems, all while avoiding taking any responsibility and admitting to their wrongdoing. Playing the victim can be a very effective strategy because it requires the other person to attack the manipulator and tell them that they are completely wrong in order to attempt to regain control of the narrative, something that most people don't want to do. Threats or coercion. Threats come in many different forms. Firstly, the obvious physical threat of violence or damage to someone's property if the victim doesn't do exactly what the manipulator wants. Then there's emotional threats, such as threatening to leave someone in a relationship over a small or petty feud, or threatening to spread